Hey, good afternoon to you. 5:06 now, News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we're making sense of the news. You can join us, 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL. Here is Korean John Pierre's babysitter, John Kirby, earlier today.
While I am limited by how much I can share about the specific nature of the threat, I can confirm that it is related to an anti-satellite capability that Russia is developing.
Oh, so now they're kind of tipping their hand. You see that big national security threat that Washington was jointly, all in unison, panicking about yesterday. The House Intel Committee warning everyone, get together, everyone, all the members of Congress need to come in for a briefing. It's top secret. You can come in. It's classified information. There's an urgent foreign threat that we need to deal with. They insisted. The White House yesterday saying, we want credit for this. We arranged this meeting to urgently warn everybody about this urgent threat. And then by last night, we found out that it had something to do with the Russians are developing a piece of technology to disable satellites. What? That's always been a threat from Russia, China, all of the high-powered adversaries. What is going on here? For more on this, let's bring in John Daniel Davidson, senior editor at the Federalist. He'll talk to us about this now. Hello, John. Good to have you with us, sir.
Hey, thanks for having me.
A lot of hysteria yesterday on Capitol Hill. What did you make of it?
Well, it looked more and more the longer it went on like manufactured hysteria. Some might even call it a psyop intended to ram through Ukraine funding and prevent FISA reform.
Yes.
Both of those things were happening yesterday, right when this emergency, briefing was called, that a national security panic was launched in the Capitol. The whole thing kind of is very suspect, especially when you given the context of what was going on.
Yeah, definitely. And so my suspicions yesterday, which I said as soon as we got on the air, was like, wait a second. It's exactly to your point. They're trying to throw some 60-something billion dollars out the door right now to Ukraine. And simultaneously, the FISA renewal is going on right now. And a lot of these intel guys, it doesn't matter what party they're a part of, all these guys in the government,
right?
They want to spy on Americans without consequence. And you've got a couple of members of the Republican Party, led, I think, by the Freedom Caucus, saying, no. You need warrants in order to even surveil Americans. They have constitutional rights, and we should honor those.
And the reason that they need warrants is because, as we saw with the Russia collusion hoax, the FISA courts, as currently constituted, don't work very well. They certainly don't prevent our intelligence agencies from spying on American citizens, on political campaigns, and indeed on members of a sitting administration. That's exactly what they did under the Trump administration and during the Trump campaign. So the idea that we would sort of trust these intel agencies now and say, oh yeah, you don't need a warrant, keep doing what you're doing, is crazy. And of course, they don't want that power to be taken away from them.
Totally crazy. Now, when I saw the notification go out yesterday that there was an urgent briefing required on Capitol Hill, and that the source of the information was the House Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence, I was stupid enough for like 5 minutes to think, oh, they must want to talk about all of the intelligence agencies around the planet spying on members of the Trump campaign. They must want to share this information, because I was sitting there, I was thinking, because the reason I thought that is because just the day before, you had Matt Taibbi and Michael Schellenberger and their fellow reporter Alex Gutentag. They released this big report, and they sourced all of the information they had to the findings of the House Permanent Intelligence Committee. And so I'm sitting here going, oh, they must want to share this with everybody now. Turns out I was completely wrong.
No, I know. Only, if that had been true, how great it would be. It would show that, the Republican, Mike Turner, who's a Republican, who's the chair of that committee, is actually interested in the purpose of the committee, which is oversight over our intelligence committees. But the last, 5 or 6 years should make it very clear in the minds of all Americans that there is no oversight to our intelligence committees. And I would go so far as to say that these intelligence committees are kind of rogue agencies that represent really a significant national security threat, and just a threat to our American way of life, our free society, and our Republican method of self-government.
So in essence, what we've discovered this week is actually they're a press shop for the intel community. They're not the oversight arm of the Congress.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Mike Turner, it was sort of AWOL. And he has been AWOL for all of the big things that really should be getting oversight in recent years. He wasn't interested in suppression of the Hunter Biden laptop story. He's not interested in this bombshell revelation that the CIA asked our allies to spy on the Trump campaign so that they could create suspicious contacts with members of the Trump campaign and then launder that to the FBI to create a pretext for a crossfire hurricane. It's crazy. What we found out this week was that the intel agencies went to war against the Trump campaign and later the Trump administration. And what we hear about instead are Russian nukes in space. Give me a break.
Yes, right. And again, to reiterate the point I made at the outset, the idea that the Russians have technologies or are developing technologies to disable satellites, there's nothing new about that. This is actually
Right.
This is literally just laundering old claims in order to create some sense of urgency and to justify less liberty for Americans.
Also, I'm sorry, but Russia can't seem to put troops in Kiev, so I don't know how they're going to put nukes in space. They've kind of proven themselves to be a lot weaker than we thought. Which also puts paid to this notion that if we don't stop Russia and Ukraine, they'll march on Poland. Really? They can't march through Ukraine. The scare tactics, using Russia as a bogeyman to justify the intel community's flouting of the law, is really getting tiresome. And I think most people are starting to see through it now. You can't blame everything on Russia. At a certain point, you got to start looking at our intel agencies and how they meddle in our domestic politics.
Well, you're totally right about the core point, though. Which, you're right about all of this, but the core point that I think is really fascinating and important is that the American intel community has been weaponized for political purposes, quite obviously,
right,
and has been coordinating with global intelligence agencies in order to achieve political outcomes. You remember that famous audio from Chuck Schumer, where Schumer said, you don't want to mess with the intel community. If you do that, they have 6 days from Sunday to get back at you. He wasn't kidding when he said that. He really meant it.
And one of the things that this revelation that we got this week about the CIA asking our allies to spy on the Trump campaign is it sheds new light on things like the raid on Mar-a-Lago for documents.
Right.
There's a real chance that the whole purpose of that raid was to get a hold of some of this material that exposed this program of the CIA trying to dig up dirt and create a pretext to have the FBI start investigating the Trump campaign. And that's exactly what Chuck Schumer said. That's the intel community fighting back. They fought Trump before he went into office. They fought him while he was in office, and they continue to go after him now that he's out of office.
I hate what they've done.
This should be the number one national security threat right now. The number one priority needs to be reforming these agencies.
I just hate what they've done to our country. And it's made me so cynical about all of these stories. Like literally just before you got on, CNN just reported here minutes ago that the FBI just intercepted a man in Las Vegas at Harry Reid International Airport and arrested him. And this is David Weiss is charging him with lying to the FBI, and it appears it's the FD 1023, the infamous FD 1023 form, where you get a long-time reliable FBI informant says, yeah, the Bidens were being bribed by Burisma in order to affect the Ukrainian prosecutor's future. And now David Weiss has suddenly arrested this person and is now accusing him of lying to the FBI, very conveniently going into this 2024 election. I'm sitting here going, this is garbage. What we're witnessing is yet more lies from our government.
Isn't it interesting? They only care about some of the FD 1023 forms. Others, they just ignore and pretend like they don't exist. But this one's a big deal. And if you read what Weiss put out, they don't even disagree with the substance of what he said. It had to do with the timing or some such. This is totally outrageous, and it should be the only thing that our corporate media outlets are talking about. But of course they won't, because they're also in the tank for Biden.
So,
but it's really shocking.
It is. It's unbelievable. Okay, so one other piece yesterday. Speaker Mike Johnson decided to push off the vote on FISA. We were talking about this idea that FISA would be reformed, that maybe there'd be a warrant requirement to protect American citizens and their civil liberties. The whole debate got scuttled yesterday, and Mike Johnson says, no, we're not doing it this week. Now, my impression at the moment yesterday was, oh, well, good, some breathing room so that we can actually reform this thing. But since then, we've seen some reporting that it was actually the Intel committee guys who pressured Mike Johnson to get rid of this vote for now because they're scared that their powers to spy on Americans are going to go away.
That's exactly what it is. You know, the Conservative Freedom Caucus guys who are pushing for these reforms to the FISA courts and the FISA process, they were winning. They were winning the debates. The momentum and the arguments were on their side. Certainly the American people are on their side. And just at the moment when it looked like they were going to be able to move this process forward for these long overdue reforms is right when Mike Johnson scuttled the whole thing and then canceled Congress for the rest of the week.
Right. And then when last time this came up, FISA reform, Congress kicked the can for a few months. It was December of last year. And they were like, well, let's just extend it. Let's just keep spying on American citizens without their knowledge, consent, or a warrant process or anything. Let's keep doing that through April of next year, and then we'll have this renewal debate again. And there were a bunch of Republicans who were a part of that can kick who disappointed me. One who sticks out in my mind, just because he's rather well known as being a conservative, was Senator Ted Cruz. Ted Cruz voted for extending FISA surveillance of the American people for a couple of months. Now, he may have some sort of justification for that, but do you think it's possible we can browbeat these guys into submission this time to actually get some fixes here?
I hope so, but I fear that the reason they do this habitually, members of both parties, is because they're afraid of the intelligence community coming after them, especially after how they've seen Trump get treated, and not just Trump, but Trump's advisors, his campaign aides, his lawyers, the lawfare that the Department of Justice, together with the intelligence community, can unleash on people, even powerful people like Trump, is astounding. And it's not lost on these lawmakers that if they get on the wrong side of the intelligence community, then they might find themselves in the crosshairs. And I think some of them are genuinely afraid that they will be singled out and targeted by our intel community. And that's why they keep backing off.
I think you're right. And also it's been well documented and reported that our own intelligence community has spied on Congress and members of Congress on several occasions, and they constantly get away with it. Nobody's ever punished for that. Of course, it's a total violation of the Constitution, but they get away with it. It's tough. But boy, it's got to be called out. John Daniel Davidson, thank you for doing that. Really appreciate your time today, sir.
Hey, thank you for having me.
Always good to talk to you. That's the John Daniel Davidson over at the Federalist. Just a fantastic website. Just fantastic. The artificial intelligence revolution is kind of freaky, isn't it? We've talked about it here on this program, and certainly you've probably encountered it somewhere in your life, that Chat GPT, you can enter a prompt of any kind. You're like, write me a term paper on Christopher Columbus discovering America, and then boom, it's out. Well, and depending on how left-wing it is, sometimes it's manipulated in order to lie about the circumstances. But regardless, it generates a super creative output that appears like it could have been written by a human. And there's all sorts of novel applications. I see people trying to come up with business plans using artificial intelligence platforms and generating text for all those stupid web pages you search for all across the internet. They're like creating nonsense filler that's not actually written by a human. Instead, it's generated by artificial intelligence. But here's an update today. This one's freaky. OpenAI, which you'll remember Elon Musk was a part of originally, and he got out, and now he's really angry at them because he thinks that they're doing bad things. OpenAI revealed a tool today, the Guardian reports, that can generate videos from text prompts. The new model is nicknamed Sora, after the Japanese word for sky, and it can produce realistic footage up to a minute long that adheres to a user's instructions on both subject matter and style. According to a company blog post, the model is also able to create a video based on a still image or extend existing footage with new material. Quote, we're teaching AI to understand and simulate the physical world in motion with the goal of training models that help people solve problems that require real-world interaction. One video included among several initial examples from the company was based on this prompt, a movie trailer featuring the adventures of the 30-year-old spaceman wearing a red wool knitted motorcycle helmet, blue sky, salt desert, cinematic style, shot on 35 millimeter film, vivid colors. And sure enough, the video that it generated, if I just jumped in a time machine and brought it back 5 years and showed it to you, you would think they'd hired actors. that they shot this on a sound stage, that they composed a scene. You know, the whole thing is generated in just seconds. Generated in seconds. This is crazy. And it's going to be, just imagine the implications of all of this. So realistic video. The only giveaway at this point is there's some occasional like sort of bending and things that you're like, oh, that's suspicious. I saw one of a cat pawing at a woman's face, and her face gets compressed in an unusual way, like she's made of Jell-O or something. Okay, that's a tell. That gives it away. It's not real. But this is going to get harder to detect. And so, you know, it used to be that like, oh, if you had a photo of somebody in the commission of a crime or a video, you'd be like, oh yeah, that definitely happened. There it is. You'd have to really go out of your way to fake it. But now, not so much. Now, how many cases are you going to have situations where somebody raises a defense in court? Your Honor, I know that looks like security footage of me committing a crime, but I am here to tell you that could be artificial intelligence. That could be fake. Who's going to get away? Who's going to be the first person to get away with it using that as the defense? Wild. Just absolutely wild. Also, this is bad news for Hollywood, isn't it? I don't know. How do they keep going? If somebody with a good story to tell doesn't need to spend any money on production, just enters, or very little for that matter, just enters a prompt into a computer, creative person figures out a way to generate some of these interesting movies, the barriers to entry are all disappearing. I've thought for years, you know, the people who do makeup on television and movies, they put makeup on people's faces. Don't you have a feeling that job is kind of starting to go by the wayside? I hope not. There's a lot of nice people who do that. Really successful, talented people who do that. But look what's happening on Snapchat, Instagram. They already have filters. If you have a pimple on your face and you'd like it to disappear before you speak to your friends over the internet, boom, that's already done. How far are we from, you know, television cameras covering up the ugly without any assistance from the outside? No human hand helping that along. I'm here to tell you the world is changing. It's kind of what the point of the show is. Coming up, more details about everything breaking in Washington this afternoon. And Fani Willis has wrapped up her testimony in Georgia. How long is she going to be tied to that Trump case? Is that Trump case going to even last? Hey, good afternoon to you. 5:35 here, News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we are making sense of the news. You can join us, 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL. If you're looking for good news this week, Alejandro Mayorkas was impeached by the United States House of Representatives. Well-deserved. In fact, I'm not sure you've heard about this. It is lots of people who work in the Department of Homeland Security, the guys who are actually on the front lines trying to do the job of securing America's border, they hate Mayorkas. They despise this guy for what he's done to our country, and they think he's deserved all of this. Over at the Daily Caller, the news foundation there, the Daily Caller News Foundation, they say, F that, I'm not even sure, this is a Spanish curse word, so I'm not sure I can say, can I say Spanish curse words? I'll just say P word, I guess. Rank and file DHS officials applaud impeachment of Secretary Mayorkas. 9 rank and file Department of Homeland Security officials told the Daily Caller News Foundation that they support the House's passage of impeachment articles against DHS Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas. The caller points to the 214-213 vote Tuesday. They voted to impeach. 7 Border Patrol agents and 2 Immigration and Customs Enforcement officials expressed their animosity towards Mayorkas, but said that it's still a long road ahead in fixing the southern border despite this. The DCNF granted anonymity to the officials. They're not authorized to speak publicly. Quote, we have laws in place that are not being enforced due to Mayorkas' leadership, one ICE official told the Daily Caller. If agents and officers were authorized to enforce the laws enacted by Congress, this influx would not have occurred. But instead, he, that's Mayorkas, pushes for agents and officers to process and release individuals as quickly as possible. Individuals are released into the United States with minimal background checks and minimal follow-up. One Border Patrol agent responded to the news of Mayorkas' impeachment by saying, F that P word. Referring to, ready? Maybe some of you who speak Spanish will know what I'm saying here. Referring to the masculine version of the Spanish slur meaning prostitute. Quote, this most likely won't change anything, but it is a symbolic win and one heck of a statement to make in an election year, the first agent said. They go on, they mentioned some of the data here and how we're at record numbers just pouring into our country. More on that in a moment because we've got a lot of bad people coming across our border right now. Quote, Mayorkas was a total dumpster fire who never owned up to the crisis he created with his disastrous policies, but I don't think the Senate is going to remove him, which sucks, said a second agent. Third Border Patrol agent says this, quote, it's definitely a step in the right direction. It's just embarrassing that it took 9 million plus illegal aliens invading our country before he was finally held accountable. Some DHS officials said that while they believe this is a good move, it's just a small part of the problem. Quote, it's about time, but the border is far greater than him. He's just the scapegoat to the true evil behind it, said a fourth agent. All for show. They passed more spending for Ukraine. Fifth Border Patrol agent saying, it's a pleasant surprise for sure, but I don't know if it's going to change anything. A second ICE official saying the following, too little, too late, honestly. Should have been done 3 years ago if they truly wanted to change the border. And why wasn't Kamala impeached as well, since she was considered and appointed the border czar by the president? This is just a political stunt to show the Republicans are tough on the border after they voted to pass that terrible border security bill. Yeah, there's a little bit... I think there's a little confusion in that last quote because it was the Senate. You're right. There are some Republicans in the Senate who hammered through a horrific amnesty deal, which the House has not taken up. And it was the House that just impeached Alejandro Mayorkas. We'll see what the Senate does with it when they get back in session. A sixth agent saying the following, that's fantastic. If we can get him out, that's 3 out of the 4 asshat clowns gone. We just need to get Sleepy Joe out, and hopefully we can start securing the homeland again, like our department title says we're supposed to be doing. God, first of all, I just want to say something. I'm hoping some of these guys, people who work in this business are in the sound of my voice. God bless you. And if you know these guys who are down working the border, please tell them. The rest of us say God bless them. What a hand they've been dealt. Imagine joining that job and then finding out what it's going to be under Biden. Impeaching the secretary, a seventh agent says this, impeaching the secretary will not disrupt the administration's goal of allowing millions of illegal aliens into the country. As long as this administration remains in place, the chaos at the border will continue. Policy changes need to be implemented immediately. That's true. That's true. That's a very accurate take on this. Now, here are the updates on what's going on our border as of this week. We have terrorists pouring in. I am sorry to say. Jenny Terror, the same reporter who just quoted all of those officials, reports this as well. Border Patrol has nabbed more terror watch-listed individuals in just the last 4 months than in previous years combined. These are people on the terror watch list of the United States government pouring across our border. Border Patrol agents have arrested more illegal immigrants whose names appeared on the terror watch list between October and January than in fiscal years 2017 through 2021 combined. Let me see. Let me do some finger math here. That's 4 years. That's 4 years of time. So in just October through January, October, November, December, January, that's 4 months. So in just 4 months, we've had more terrorists cross our border than in 4 years. From 2017 to 2021 combined. And, of course, what time frame is 2017 to 2021? That's the Trump presidency we're talking about. According to Customs and Border Protection data, just updated this week, Border Patrol nabbed 59 illegal immigrants on the terror watch list nationwide in that 4-month span, according to federal data. Between fiscal year 2017 and 2021, Border Patrol nabbed 30 individuals whose names appeared on the watch list. Now, if you're paying attention, if you're a Biden official, here's how you interpret that data. Oh, we're better at catching terrorists than Donald Trump. This is their thing, right? They do the same thing with fentanyl. Like, we're catching record hauls of fentanyl on the border. Yeah, that's because of how much you're missing. That's because of how much more is coming across now. That's what's happening. Border Patrol apprehensions of terror watch-listed migrants hit 172 in fiscal year 2023 and 98 in fiscal year 2022. Imagine how many we're letting go. Just imagine how many are making it through. Gotaways. You know, if you're the average person whose buddies are terrorists and you suspect you're on the American terror watch list, you're not the guy who's standing up there and going, hey, can I get asylum, please? No, you're just making a run for it. You get across, you make a run for it. The border's wide open. You can do that. And you know who else is doing that? It's not just people on the terror watch list. It's people from our country's biggest adversary, China. There has been an utter explosion in Chinese illegals crossing the American border. There's a report out of the website Yahoo today. You remember them? Yahoo! Yeah, they still exist. Yahoo News, headline today, why are so many Chinese crossing the southern border? They ask. A record number of Chinese asylum seekers, with help from social media, are now making the dangerous trek across the U.S.-Mexico border, and it's quickly becoming a hot-button political issue. Here's why. Yeah, that's the most important thing about it. It's a hot-button political issue. No, it's Chinese foreign nationals pouring across. Why are Chinese foreign nationals pouring across our southern border? Anyone want to pause to ask any of these questions? According to U.S. Customs and Border Protection, since October of 2023, that is just a few short months ago, almost 16,000 Chinese illegal migrants have come across the U.S.-Mexico border, more than doubling the previous fiscal year's total number of Chinese migrants in a matter of months. These unprecedented numbers are making Chinese nationals the single fastest growing population to cross into the United States from Mexico. Did you know about this? Did you know how dramatically the Chinese illegal immigrant problem has exploded on our southern border over just the past few months? Customs and Border Protection data reveals that from January to November of 2023, last year, over 30,000 Chinese people were detained by border agents after crossing illegally. In 2021, meanwhile, there were only, ready for the number? 323. That was in 2021. That would be partially Trump in office, mostly Biden that year, 2021. There were only 323 Chinese nationals illegally crossing into our country that year. As of last year, just the first 9 months alone, 30,000. 30,000. It gets better, in case you were wondering. Social media platforms like Douyin, which is the Chinese version of TikTok. This is, remember the Chinese version of TikTok, the comparisons here? What they do in China is they teach the kids to pursue excellence, and they give them, and like their social media platforms are like, you know, look at this kid, he did amazing math, and like I want to do amazing math. Like that's the whole thing, right? And here in America, it's like, oh, here's how to ingest Tide Pods. You should dye your hair and reject your parents, and you know, and your gender is fake. And like that's what's happening on TikTok. In China, it's like, here's, remember to always give the government your money, and like all the stuff that they want out of their people, and then all the stuff they want out of our people, and China's controlling the whole deal, right? Of course, the Biden campaign just like jumped headfirst onto TikTok last week. They're like, that's great. And meanwhile, the federal government, as of this moment, still bans federal employees from using TikTok, but the Biden campaign doesn't care. They're like, yeah, whatever, let's just use TikTok. That's where the kids are. Yeah. I am interested in how much the Chinese Communist Party is putting its fingers on the scale for the Biden campaign's presence on TikTok. Don't you wonder that? Now that the Biden campaign is active on TikTok, you curious at all about that? How frequently their content is going to be served to the kids to get Biden reelected? Has anybody explored this yet? I'm just curious. It'd be kind of interesting to see what happens there. So Douyin, the Chinese version of TikTok, has been laying out step-by-step directions for Chinese nationals so that when they leave China, they know how to get into the United States. The guides include survival tips on how to pack, where to stay, who to contact, how to cross the Darien Gap, what to do if they cross a border agent, and the gap to find how to cross into the United States. All of those things. So Chinese social media companies are helping their own people illegally immigrate into the United States across our southern border. All of it. Even when immigration courts try to deport them. You ready for this part now? This is so when we try and get rid of Chinese foreign nationals, what do? Well, normally, right, you'd have to work out that country is willing to accept their own nationals back, right? Guess who's not taking them back? China. Because, of course, they're in on it. Even when immigration courts try to deport them, many stay in the United States because China will not repatriate them, leaving them in a kind of legal limbo. And because we're suckers, what that means for us is, oh, well, I guess you get to stay here. That's the whole thing. And then finally, in this book of Job tale of our southern border, which never seems to get any better, Biden wants to make it worse. This week, the Biden administration, it was reported in the Washington Post, it's considering making the whole border crisis even worse. This is after they claimed, it's not even our fault. It's not our responsibility. Congress can fix it. Washington Post headline, after border bill failure, ICE considers mass releases to close budget gap. Mass releases. U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement has drafted plans to release thousands of immigrants and slash its capacity to hold detainees after the failure of a Senate border bill that would have erased a $700 million budget shortfall, according to 4 officials at ICE and the Department of Homeland Security. The bipartisan border bill that Republican lawmakers opposed last week would have provided $6 billion in supplemental funding for ICE enforcement operations. The bill's demise has led ICE officials to begin circulating an internal proposal to save money by releasing thousands of detainees and cutting detention levels from 38,000 beds to 22,000. The opposite of the enforcement increases Republicans say they want. This is the Washington Post version of events. So now we're in a hostage crisis, right? Now, in fact, the Biden administration is threatening to hurt us unless Congress gives them their asylum bill. Their amnesty bill. Unless Congress does it. They said, well, I guess we're going to have to empty out the beds. We're just going to have to release all of the illegals, whatever illegals we still are detaining, and there are very few, by the way. They release almost everybody. But whoever else we're holding on to, I guess we're just going to have to release them. We don't have the budget to look after all these people. You know how you solve that, right? If you actually meant that. Do you know how you solve that? You secure the border. You wouldn't have this problem. We just have too many people in beds, too many people being detained. You wouldn't have this issue. If you secured the border, problem solved. We wouldn't be wasting money on any of this. We wouldn't have to spend millions on NGOs to human traffic people into the country. Millions. How about billions on NGOs to do that? We wouldn't have to be using all this money, $6 billion. We wouldn't need that for all these ICE beds to hold everybody. None of that. We would have a secure border, and we wouldn't have an illegal immigration problem. But you created this. And now you want to create more suffering for us because we're not giving Biden, what was it he wanted more of? Power. He said during this debate, he said, give me the power. Do you remember that? Give me the power, he screeched. And I'm sitting there going, no, the last thing you need more of is power, dude. Not you, especially not you. It's 5:50.
Hey, Vince, nice to talk to you. I wanted you to know, I don't know if you've seen this, but G. Van Fleet tweeted about this a couple days ago, or X'd about it, whatever you say.
Mm-hmm.
And that this was, I don't know if it's the same video that you're talking about from China, but it's, it's in Chinese. She translated it. And she said that it is being actually underwritten or put out by Voice of America.
I'm looking at, thank you for calling my attention to this. So this is, I wasn't talking about a video in particular, other than like TikTok, apparently. The Chinese version of TikTok is helping Chinese foreign nationals illegally immigrate into our country. But you're referencing the great Xi Van Fleet, who loves this country and grew up in Mao's China and is warning everybody against the perils of that. She said she came across a video on YouTube that was put there by the Voice of America, which is, of course, funded by you and me in the form of our tax dollars. The video was posted 8 months ago. It explains to potential illegals in China what to expect once they arrive in the U.S. In summary, nothing to worry about if they end up in sanctuary cities. Benefits include government housing, free health care, free public schools, lunches, good employment opportunities, rights to sue employers, no worries about deportation, on and on. Holy cow. So this is a big deal, Martha.
Yep.
Yeah, and the Voice of America posted this? What? This is crazy. What is wrong with our country, Martha?
Marxists.
Marxists. You said it well. She summarized it in one word. Marxists. Thank you, Martha. I really appreciate it. You know who knows a lot about that? The next host on this great network, the great one, Mark Levin. Don't miss him. He's up next here on WMAL. I'm back with you tomorrow. God bless.